Good evening. I want to welcome everybody that's here tonight, whether you're here in person or perhaps joining by Zoom. Appreciate all the guys that volunteered to lead us in some songs tonight. Tonight, I'm going to just share basically four points, a couple of passages that I'm going to pull out for us to think about. But these thoughts really kind of originated thinking about Ralph Eldridge gave a lesson last Sunday, I think it was, and he talked about growing in different parts of our life. You know, thinking about the new year, different ways that we can grow. I think, if I recall correctly, he talked about growing in faith. He talked about growing in grace. Drawing a blank on the third one, but there was a statement that he made at some point in his lesson. It's been something that I've been thinking about since he mentioned that, but also kind of prior to that. He mentioned that challenges will arise. Challenges are going to come up no matter how well we might plan, no matter how strong our desire is to grow, maybe to improve. And that was something that, again, just appreciated his whole lesson, but that was something that, as I mentioned, stuck out to me from last week, something that I've probably been thinking about to some degree anyway over the last several weeks. So I want to share, I'm certainly no expert on this, but it's just some thoughts that came to my mind in thinking about that, and whether it's perhaps goals that we have for our life, or maybe it's spiritual struggles or things with our faith that we want to see improve. I think these passages can apply to all of those situations that we might find ourselves in. So the first one that I want to mention, or the thought that comes to mind, dealing with challenges when we have obstacles come up in our life, is maybe taking a moment to determine how important is this? How important is this thing, or this thing that I'm working on, or this thing that I want to occur? I'd like to turn to Nehemiah chapter 1. We're going to read a few verses here from Nehemiah, but there's a couple of things that jump out. And one of the things, I think Nehemiah certainly evaluates the situation for the Israelite people. Of course, he was a cupbearer for the king, and he hears about the situation back in Jerusalem and how things were. The wall had been broken down, and it's interesting to see his reaction. I'd like to notice. Of course, if you're familiar with Nehemiah, this is nothing new. Chapter 1, verse 4, it says, "As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven." So think about obstacles that we might encounter. How important is it to you? How passionate are you about that thing, or that event, or that situation? That goal, perhaps. I see Nehemiah, describes him as weeping and mourning, not just for a short period, but for days. So clearly, this was something that weighed heavy on his heart. And that may be something that we have to kind of think about. As we face obstacles, we all have a certain amount of time in any given day. We all have other different priorities. And so how important is perhaps this goal or the situation that I'm dealing with, where there's a challenge, there's perhaps a problem. And I bring that up just because, easily in our society, I would say maybe too easily, we can often give up. We can quit before really we should. And so consider, how important is this? Another thing that comes to mind is going to God, and that's the next thing that we see Nehemiah doing in chapter 1. I'd like to read verses 4 through 11. Just think about some of the things that he mentions. I'll actually start in verse 5. It's recorded, "And I said, O Lord, God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant, that I now pray before you day and night for the people of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins of the people of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Even I and my father's house have sinned. We have acted very corruptly against you and have not kept the commandments, the statutes, the rules that you commanded your servant Moses. Remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the people. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though your outcasts are in the uttermost parts of heaven, from there I will gather them and bring them to the place that I have chosen to make my name dwell there. They are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. O Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight for your name, and give success to your servant today, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man." Just reading those words, you see different things that Nehemiah brings forward. He says, one, he recognizes that they're guilty of sin and admits that, and he places his thoughts, his cares before God. And he says to remember the things that you've said in the past, that if you were unfaithful, there would be punishment, but if you return to me and keep my commandments, that he would bring them to the place that he had been chosen. This call to God to remember what he had promised. And he says, listen, verse 11, be attentive to the prayer of your servant. And so certainly, going to God in prayer with our thoughts, our cares, our problems, our struggles. I don't know if you've ever maybe caught yourself in thinking this way, that maybe this thing in my life that's going on, maybe God doesn't really care about it. It's not that important when you think about salvation or you think about other things. But I would argue that God cares about it all. He cares about us. He cares about our lives. And so things that we might be dealing with, challenges that we might be facing, he cares. And we need to bring those thoughts to him. Everything put out on the table. God is big enough to certainly handle all those things. And so remembering that we have a special avenue that we can go to God in prayer. Another thing that I want to mention, dealing with challenges, and certainly this has been something that I have personally struggled with at times, and that's reaching out to others. There's, of course, plenty of passages that have this thought in mind. I'm going to just bring up a couple. Probably most of us are familiar with these. One passage comes to mind, Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, where Paul writes, "Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." And so we have this idea of this community of assisting each other, of helping each other, encouraging each other. And certainly that is something that we should have and that we should be striving for. And so thinking about reaching out to others to share, to gain strength, to get maybe perhaps different ideas, different thoughts of, I'm dealing with a challenge, I'm dealing with a problem. Maybe there's something there that someone can assist you with or put into a different light. Proverbs 17 and verse 17 It says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. So again, developing those connections, that sense of community with each other where we can share thoughts, share ideas, help each other in times of need. One other passage from Proverbs, the 27th chapter, verse 17, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, I don't think it's uncommon that sometimes people will start to find themselves isolated for various reasons, and that can pull down on your ability to maybe rise above a challenge or to deal with a problem, thinking maybe people don't care about that, or they've never dealt with that, or whatever the case might be. There's all kinds of excuses that that we can think of. And I think that isolates ourselves from being able to build each other up and to develop our strength and for one another. Sometimes, especially within churches, it can become a situation where people feel, well, nobody cares about me, nobody reaches out, things like that, and that can certainly happen. It has happened. And as churches, we need to be aware of that. We need to be striving to improve our ability to try to ensure that happens as little as possible. But I'd also say sometimes we need to be on the search, reaching out to people. Maybe it's just, maybe that person hasn't done or dealt with the same things you have, but maybe sometimes just sharing your thoughts with someone, just getting them off your chest can be something that can motivate you to go further, or can be just a release. That could be of some assistance, but seek people out. Don't let that just fall on others for them to come and seek you, but you be seeking that for yourself as well. So reaching out to others, learning from others. Don't be too proud to gain insight from others. I was actually reading a podcast, and the transcript of it was talking about some of these things, and the specific podcast was dealing with learning from people that are younger than you. And again, putting, that might be a source of pride for some of us, and not wanting to think or feel that, maybe I could benefit from just talking to so-and-so who's perhaps even younger than me. But again, driving out that prideful attitude and being able to learn from others. But regardless, reaching out to others. And certainly there's people here at this congregation, but many of us know people in other congregations. If it's not here, find somebody else somewhere else. But be reaching out for others' assistance and be able to learn from them. Final point that I want to mention is that comes to mind, and I just kind of titled it a mindset to persevere. Often times when people are successful at things, or they've overcome things, or they've been victorious with something, it wasn't always just a smooth, straight path. There's curves, there's bumps, there's things that are going to try to stop you. And certainly, if it's of anything of good, anything of value that can bring glory to God, you know and I know that Satan is certainly going to try to stop that to some degree. But sometimes we have to go through the pain and the problems that come with ultimately being successful at things. A couple of passages that just came to mind. Psalm chapter 30 and verse 5. It says, "For his anger is but for a moment, and his favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes with the morning." Again, just thinking about something bothering you, something keeping you up perhaps at night, but over time, joy coming in the morning. That also brought to mind for me passage from Hebrews, the 12th chapter. And this specifically talks about discipline, spiritual discipline from our Heavenly Father. But I think there's application to this to both when perhaps we've been dealing with sin or temptation. We know maybe something is not right, or it's against God's will, and we receive some type of rebuke or something that pricks us in the heart. But I think that there's also this application as well of just in discipline in general, as far as persevering through things and letting a process mold you. Hebrews chapter 12, starting in verse 3, says, "Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood, and you have not forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons. My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and chastises every son whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. Besides this, we have had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time as it seemed best to them. But he disciplines us for our good, that we may share his holiness. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." So again, just being trained by the discipline that we receive on a spiritual level. Again, kind of going back to maybe challenges that we could be facing. Sometimes we might have to change our tactics. Maybe we have to reconsider how we're approaching something. But again, not just going to the idea of this isn't working and so I'm quitting, or giving up perhaps before we should. And also, I want to say one other thing with these thoughts, especially if you've overcome trials, if you've overcome problems, especially on a spiritual level, or something that has some spiritual application to it, well, you've got a lot to offer to other people, because at some point further down the road, you are going to encounter someone who needs your help, who needs the words that you have, who needs to hear from you because you have been there and you have struggled with some of the same things. Somebody is going to need you. So the encouragement, I guess, for all of us to be on the lookout for different things that perhaps you've dealt with, that you see or you know somebody dealing with something similar, that maybe you might be a source of encouragement or a source to propel them to greatness. Final, thought that will serve as an invitation tonight. Jesus certainly dealt with challenges. Pretty much his whole, many things throughout his ministry, he dealt with challenges. And then, of course, being put to the cross because of evil men, evil desires. And yet, we see Jesus going to the cross. And this is a passage that just doesn't get old for me personally to read, because we see the heart of Jesus Christ. and thinking that he went to the cross for me, that he's willing to forgive anyone and everyone if they will just come to him. Luke 23 and verse 34, as they've crucified him, they put him on the cross. Verse 34 is recorded, and Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." And so if you're in the audience tonight, know that Jesus has that much love for you, that he laid his life down, paid the ultimate price so that mankind could be forgiven of sins. If you're in the audience tonight and you recognize that you're separated from God, you recognize that that can be changed by becoming obedient to him, becoming baptized, and striving to walk a new life. You have the opportunity tonight to do that. If you're in the audience tonight and perhaps you've already become a Christian, but let's face it, the challenges of life sometimes can get very difficult. They can pull us down, they can weigh us down, and sometimes they may take our eye off of the Lord, off of Christ, when it needs to be there at all times. But if there's something that you feel like you need to bring before the congregation, you can do that tonight as well. So if you're subject to the invitation, please come forward as we stand and as we sing.